Hello, it's Bronwyn Lund from BronHolm Tours. I make 360 video walking tours for people who either can't get to the island of Bornholm or can't get around the island of Bornholm. And today we're actually standing on the east coast of the island between the towns of Svanke and Årsdale. And it's a historically significant area here because it was a fishing area. So we're going to have a little look at the place where the fishermen actually fished, and then walk along the coast in a southwards direction for about 15 or 20 minutes. So I hope you enjoy the tour. Right now we are looking north towards the Svanke lighthouse. And as you can see, we're just probably about 300 metres south of Svanke along the coastal path. It's a glorious day today. It's very sunny, so I'm hoping that the sun doesn't cause too much problem with the visualisation of everything that's going along. But we'll just have to see how it goes. I'm just going to walk up here and just stand here in this embankment, which is actually the location of where a very small, I wouldn't even call it a village, a collection of huts would have been way back in the Middle Ages for fishermen. And the residences were temporary, mainly because it was too dangerous to live on the coast with the marauders and the Wends coming to pillage the island, but also because the towns were much more inland in the Middle Ages. So this would have been a large group of huts. And numerous finds of German coins, imported pottery, show that many people lived here during the 13th and 14th century. Most likely the huts were seasonal dwellings for German merchants who purchased the large amount of herring which could be caught in the Baltic until the beginning of the 15th century. And there's a little bit more information in Danish, and it just talks about the fact that the herring, because it's a high fat type of fish, was a very popular fish, and the herring that was in the Baltic Sea, probably because the Baltic Sea is colder, I guess, had a good reputation for having a high level of fat which absorbed the salt. So they preserved very well. So there was a very, very thriving herring market on Bornholm during the Middle Ages. And actually up on the north of the island, there's a wonderful little chapel called Solomon's Chapel. And that was actually the chapel set up for the herring market that was running up there in the north of the island. So as I said, we're just going to walk along the coast for a bit and enjoy the coastal walk. It's the middle of summer, and so there's a lot of leaves on the trees, so we can't see down to the water as well as we can during the winter. But I have actually made a lot of winter walks of the coast of Bornholm. So check out the winter walks if you sort of want a better view of the coast rather than the forest. But the forest is also very nice to walk through. And the sign was actually just saying that there's about 50 of these small embankments. So the embankments would have been built as protection around the small groups of houses, the very tiny villages that were the temporary fishing villages. Hi.
Hi.
So this is just a bit more information about the coastline along here. The open spaces between Årsdalevej and the coast are scheduled. The County of Bornholm is responsible for taking care of the uncultivated areas. Most of the coastal areas are left in a natural state, either covered with scrub or barren coastal rock consisting of Svanke granite. Since this kind of granite crumbles unevenly, the coast is rugged and jagged. Small areas are cultivated for farming and gardening. Access to the area is only permitted on foot along the red path shown on the map, and visitors are allowed in the green shaded areas. So sites along the way is the Frennebugt, which we just came from, and that's the fringe of Svanke's former outlying field. There's a monolith, and we'll actually go past Frennebugt Battery, which is an old battery which was used in the defence of Bornholm against the Swedes during the 1500s, and a couple of different sort of little tiny harbours. So let's continue along. The town Svanke is the word Svanke is a version of the Danish word svane, which means swan, and this white swan is actually the national animal or the national bird of Denmark. And where I come from, Western Australia, our national, or our state, I should say, it's not a national. Some people in Western Australia do wish Western Australia was national, but the animal that is the emblem of Western Australia is a black swan. So it's quite interesting that Denmark has the white swan and Western Australia has the black swan. And if you ever go to Perth in Scotland, which is what Perth, the capital city of Western Australia, is named after, they've actually imported black swans to Perth in Scotland, and they sail along the river there in the city, so it's quite nice, I think. I don't know how the black swans feel about it. I think they're breeding quite happily on the river there, so it's all good. So just up ahead of us to the right is the embankment that formed the battery, and on this battery there would have been cannons for firing out towards enemy ships. We'll walk on top of the battery and have a bit of a look out. I'm fascinated by the history of Bornholm. People have been living on this island, farming and fishing for around 5,000 years. There's quite a lot of archaeological evidence that people lived here during the Iron Age. So here we are on top of the battery. There would have been cannons down here on the right hand side, and we have a lovely view of the lighthouse in the distance. Path goes along here. Just hoping the sun doesn't blind you too much. And as we go down again, we can actually see the town of Årsdale in the distance. So it's not very far between the fishing villages. But they really only became fishing villages out on the coast, and it only really became safe to live out on the coast in the later years after the Middle Ages, because the risk of marauders and people coming to pillage the island was so high. But even after the Reformation and after it internal struggles between the church and the king and the royalty died down, there was still a threat from Sweden, and there was often wars, long wars between Sweden and Denmark for hundreds of years. So there was this living with this constant threat of attack and war. It must have been quite depressing, I imagine. Makes you realise how fortunate we are. I'll just go over and have a look at the view of Orsdale from this vantage point. I just put my phone on silent. It's the height of rudeness to have messages and things popping while I'm doing a film, so I apologise for that.
Et billede af det.
Hej.
Ja, det var fedt. Nå, skal vi?
So that was a walking tour of the coast of Bornholm on the eastern side of the island, between the fishing towns of Svanke and Årsdale, which we can see off to the right here. This is Bronwyn Lund from BronHolm Tours, signing off. Bye for now.